Okay. Today, my guest is Professor Asli Colpan. I'll keep my introduction short to maximize our time with her. In the next 30 minutes or so, we'll talk about Asli as a person. Professor Colpan is a thought leader and an esteemed scholar, and finally is a mentor to many PhD students and junior faculty. For the sake of time, I'll skip many of her accomplishments and give you a very quick snapshot. Her research interests include corporate strategy, corporate governance, business history, especially in the evolution of large enterprises in developed and emerging economies. She's a professor of corporate strategy at Kyoto, and her research has been published in top journals such as Industrial and Corporate Change, Journal of Management Studies, SMJ, Business History and Corporate Governance. She is a co-editor of the Oxford Handbook of Business Groups and the Business Groups in the West, Origins, Evolution, and Resilience. And she was awarded the, I hope I don't butcher it, it's the Tachibana Prize for the most outstanding female scholar at Kyoto. She's currently the associate editor of Asian Business and Management and senior editor of Management and Organization History. Thank you, Asli, for joining us.
Thank you so much, Ilgas, for having me. It's really an honor to be part of this series. Thank you.
Asli, first question always is about your background. What did you want to become when you were a child?
Thank you. Actually, many different things. Earliest I recall is I want to be an architect. Then I wanted to be an interior designer. And interesting that I recall very well that I didn't want to be a doctor. And the reason is that my mother is a doctor and my father is a was a senior bank executive. And somehow my father wanted me to be a doctor. But seeing hospitals, at least in Turkey, which are quite chaotic and not so neat, and then bank executive offices, which are so beautiful and fancy, I like the ones that looked more beautiful and neat to me at the time. And there was a period when I was, I think, 19 years old or so, when I wanted to work in a machinery company in Japan. But because I couldn't speak the language, that never happened. And then I think it's only after my mid-20s and so on that I thought about the academia seriously and wanted to become an academic.
Where did you grow up in Turkey?
In Izmir,
Oh,
in
yeah.
the agencies, yes. Very beautiful city.
Of course. And do you now speak Japanese?
Yes, I speak and teach in Japanese.
Perfect. Something that is not on your CV that people might find interesting about you?
Probably, that, I like Japan a lot. I, love that everything is quite close to perfect here in terms of timing, etc. People are quite nice, kind. So I love the atmosphere here. And I also have a half Japanese 4-year-old toddler, which takes most of my time currently. Yeah, these are maybe on the more personal side, but probably people don't know.
If you could do it all over again, what would be the second best career path or second best path for you?
Honestly, I really don't know what I can do better than I'm doing currently. But I really wanted to be like my father. He's really he was really the role model for me. So I think I wish somehow that I also, were a top executive in a company like a bank. I really, admired him for all my life.
So Asli, how did you choose academia? How did you choose within academia IB?
Actually, I started really with engineering. So in my undergrad degree, I was trained as an engineer. And then in my master's degree in the UK, I studied management. And then I came to Japan with a scholarship on engineering, actually. So I studied a dual degree by studying engineering and management at the same time. So my sort of career is a bit, not so straightforward. Maybe some others are similar, but I would then label myself mostly a strategy scholar. But then I've done a lot of multi-country studies, I think, early on in my career, probably especially so from the time when I was a postdoctoral fellow. Did I answer your question enough?
Yeah. Regrets in life, any regrets, things that you should have or you would have done differently or you thought about doing differently?
In terms of academic, life, then probably I wish I studied economics in my undergrad or at least graduate degree. I somehow, envy the economists when I talk with them. I always feel that, they are superior somehow because it's really the basis of, I think, foundation of also management. So I wish I had a much more, solid knowledge.
Okay. And what did you learn from your biggest failure?
I don't know if I should call it a failure, but as I mentioned, I wanted to work in a Japanese company originally when I was like 20, something like that. And then I couldn't speak Japanese. Then I started my academic career here, but my Japanese wasn't enough. So I had some tough time in, academic meetings or, administrative, whatever meetings. In one meeting, I remember I cried because, I couldn't reply as I wanted to, because I couldn't grasp the question so well. So that gave me really a sort of, that forced me really to understand the language. If I wanted to excel in the setting, that I should be really, native, quite native, then, I can always, become better.
But I'm curious. Most people, I would assume, if language was a problem, they would just go back to England. They would go back to the US because you're comfortable with English, let's say. How come you stuck in Japan?
I went to the US for, I think, 2 years in total or so. And, I studied in the UK, I lived in Turkey, but other than the language as put aside, I really like the, country, as I mentioned originally. So maybe it's because my character is like, I'm kind of a perfectionist person. So I like the, setting here that everything is, there are rules, people abide by the rules. And, it's quite comfortable to me to live in this kind of, atmosphere.
Perfect.
So it fit my character, I think. That's why I didn't think that, I thought I'll overcome the language barrier anyway, if I stick to it, if I work hard.
Okay. And what are you most proud of?
Yeah, that question I saw in the list you sent, but I don't know how people answer this, but I don't think I'm really proud of anything about myself. I never think that way. I think it's for other people if they would like to be proud of me. Probably my family, is proud of my, academic career, success in this, sort of foreign country, Japan, and that I'm trying to raise my daughter in a good way. So I don't think I'm particularly proud of anything.
Perfect. Thank you. So let's say you're traveling in Japan, you're trying to see some sites away from your city. You're stranded on the side of the road. There's a little village and there are locals that are curious about you. They don't read SMJ, they don't read JIPS. So how do you explain your research to them and how do you explain why your research is important?
Yeah, probably that's not so easy job, but let me try. I would probably say that I'm working on big business and on how and why companies, large companies, diversify into many, let's say, unrelated businesses by forming groups, and how they can create or destroy value by doing that. And then linking to IB, I would probably try my best to explain the differences across countries over time. For instance, in emerging economies, diversified groups dominate the big business economy in their individual nations, while in the Western nations, there has been a historical rise and decline kind of wave. And if I go into more detail, and I don't know if people will still listen to me, but I'll talk about the first rise really before the end of the second industrial revolution by the 1920s. And then we see a decline of these groups around the interwar period, basically due to government policies against groups, breaking the groups. And then we say global conglomeration drive, where the groups reform in the 1960s and 1970s, starting with the US, and then after that, after 1980s, breaking conglomerates and breaking groups, basically due to changing shareholder ideology and management fads. And I think this is at least I'm fascinated. I don't know what the crowd will think about it, but I really enjoy studying big business, because they are really the critical, core economic players in any economy. That they can create wealth, jobs, but also they can become parasites through, crony capitalism and other, means. So I think that I would say these things.
Thank you. Things, in your opinion, things that are omitted in IB research, things that are overlooked, understudied, some of the variables, contexts, or things that we should be thinking more of.
Okay, maybe rather than omitted variables, I'll try to answer the understudied topics that I think, and again, I'm not so sure if I'm the, most fit person to answer this question, but I think probably teams outside the general strategy or strategic management teams, like finance and marketing related topics related to multinationals, are less studied and will bring a lot of value. I also think in terms of methodology, currently I think most research is quantitative, so more qualitative, and especially I think maybe coming also from a business history background, historical approaches will also bring a lot of value to IB, like the long-term evolution of international strategies, how and why they change in different nations, and so on. Probably these could be some of the things that people can study more.
Thank you. So how does your mind work? How do you come up with paper ideas? When sitting idle, your mind is thinking in idle curiosity. How does the idea for the next paper come?
So I don't really have idle time, honestly. Now I'm really stuck and overwhelmed with my current whatever I'm doing work, and the toddler very active. But new ideas, I think they build really on each other. So I'm doing a paper, and then I finish it, but still I feel something is not enough. So I want to dig more on that. So it leads to another paper, and I do different things like strategy, governance, history. So there are so many different things, and these all sort of sometimes connect to each other. For instance, one thing I'm doing is now on female, directors, and it's a lot. There's so much things to do, at least in Japanese setting. It's an understudied topic in Japan, and I do that, for instance, for governance journal,
Okay.
and then
Okay.
I think about doing it more in a historical way, and so on. So they interconnect, and as academics, we don't really stop thinking. So it's a tough
Do you
job.
write every day? Do you work every day?
Yes, I do work every day.
Yeah.
The weekends, and I now cannot because of my daughter. So
Okay.
I have to spend time with her. She doesn't really let me do anything, but the other weekday, yes.
If you could look into a crystal ball, what would you say the next 5 to 10 years of the field, the big questions, the big challenges in the field would be?
Again, probably I'm not the most qualified person to answer this, but probably, as I mentioned, increasing the scope of IB research outside, as I said, the strategic management discipline, more historical studies, and probably for the next 5-10 years, looking at the grand challenges that people are talking currently about, how in different crises or different uncertain environments that we are facing today will affect IB, things like international supply chains and so on. So those things probably will at least occupy the research of people, for the short to midterm at least.
Okay. When you were going through the PhD program yourself, who was your advisor?
So I had 2 advisors. One is, as I said, in the engineering department, and the other person in the economics department. So I had a really, in a sense, not so common maybe a PhD life. So
Yeah.
it's Professor Masahiro Shimotani, who is a business historian.
What was the best advice you received from him?
What was the best advice I received from him? Probably, that I don't know if it's from him or some other scholar, but that I shall have large perspective and think and work on bigger things and don't lose time on small issues or for small people on that matter. So always try to have a large perspective on things. Maybe because there were historians mostly around me at the economics department, so having
Okay.
a long-term perspective.
And when you work with PhD students yourself, when you're training your PhD students, what's the most common mistakes that you see your students make?
I think at least for my own PhD students in Japan, and probably this may be the case in other places, but they get too much focused on publishing something, and publishing becomes the real end, the goal. And I tell them that they should try to engage in the questions, think of bigger questions and questions that they feel passionate about, which will bring some value to the society, the companies, and those should be the goals. And then publication should be the mean to reach that goal. And if it goes otherwise, sometimes they get into questions which are sort of meaningless, but they think they can publish it. And I think, people, young scholars, and maybe we all of us should, have a different perspective.
How is the process working in Japan? Do they work on their own and they just publish in any journal that will accept the paper, or do they target AMR, AMJs, MJ Egypt, something specific? How is the process for them?
For the PhD students, we don't really, tell them which journals they will publish. So there is no target journal, but it really depends on the students. So if students want to go to international job markets, they of course target the, top international journals. Like I have an amazing student, and he'll be happy to hear this when he probably watches this. So he's doing a master's degree first year, and he just published this paper in the Journal of Corporate Finance, which I'm so proud.
That's good.
Yeah. So it depends, and there are some students who prefer Japanese, language journals, which is totally fine.
Also, for the sake of time, what's the question that I should have asked you but haven't?
I think we talked about this briefly in the beginning, but I think you probably asked everything. And if you haven't asked, I would have said that you can ask me why I chose to live in Japan. But I probably mentioned about it, that I like the society, the people, kindness of the people, and the safety of the country. And academic freedom at Kyoto University. I think this is a very nice university. Otherwise, I wouldn't stay here so long.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. I enjoyed this conversation. I learned a lot. I'm sure the audience will agree with me. Thank you, Asli.
Thank you so much, Elias. It was really a pleasure talking to you.